I'm a DJ boy, going to Dcentral, minting NFT, from the bayous, being crypto poor but JPEG rich.
GM.
What's up, Dcentral Con? So yeah, I am the mayor. I'm the host of the NFT and Chill podcast, and we'll basically be doing a live episode here for our Fireside chat.
And I'm Luca, the CEO of Pudgy Penguins. If you guys are familiar, the cute little penguins that live on the Ethereum blockchain, that's us.
Definitely. So let's get into, how did you get into Web3 and NFTs?
Yeah, so back in August, I'm somebody who's been like an avid collector and just collectibles. And some friends of mine told me to buy apes back right after they minted. And I started getting into it slowly but surely in Top Shop, as well as like some ferocious stuff, some nifty gateway stuff. And then subsequently, what had happened was I saw these apes, and then I saw these penguins, and I just aped. And so the rest is kind of history. And then I fell in love with the space. I realized what it was. And I just kind of found, as somebody who has been in multiple different businesses, from D2C and B2B and SaaS, and just being a huge collector of just art and just collectibles in general, I realized that NFTs kind of remove the friction of what it is to buy and sell collectible items. And you know, during the pandemic, I probably spent $1 million on sports cards and a couple other things. And you know, selling these items and moving them and trying to transact with them is so difficult, and there's so much friction that once, you know, I kind of saw the NFTs and the ability to buy and sell in real time, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be around for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. So did you come in like through the crypto world? That's usually how people get into NFTs.
Yeah, so my world is with direct consumer brands. So what I've done for the last, 5-6 years is I've been working with some of the biggest companies that sell online in terms of, moving units. So I've probably in the last, 5 years been attributed to about $250 to $300 million in revenue that I've generated for myself or companies that I work with.
Excellent. So let's get into Pudgy Penguins, because it's a very interesting project, and it's had an interesting story to the genesis to where we are now. When did you get into Pudgy Penguins?
Yeah, so the interesting story about Pudgy is, for those of you guys who don't know, but when NFTs first started taking off, there was 3 main projects that in my professional opinion, were responsible for the craze that is what NFTs are today. It was Bored Ape, it was CryptoPunks, and it was Pudgy Penguins. For those of you guys who remember, in August and September, when this space really started to take off, those were the 3 projects that were moving the needle and that made people the most money probably at that time, and probably kickstarted this whole thing. What had happened was Pudgy kind of fell off and teetered off after that had happened, but I had came in and acquired the project about 2 months ago. And I acquired it because, one, it was an interesting deal at the time, because nobody has really bought an NFT project, or at least like an individual has. And I just felt like it wasn't given the right chance to survive that I thought it needed. And per my experience in clothes and toys and things that I've done at a high level for a long time, I thought that we could use and take my expertise and the team's expertise and, hopefully compete for the #1 spot. But, 2 months ago, I bought it for $2.5 million from Cool Ethereum and those guys. And so that is the story of Pudgy the Penguins up until this point.
Yeah, it's kind of a historic thing. The community kind of acquired an NFT project from the founders, right? The community sort of, let's say the founders didn't complete some of the roadmap, and then the community kind of did a little bit of an uprising, and I think that's extremely interesting. And then, you came in and just kind of saved the project, and now you have a team behind you, right?
Yeah, so we're a team of 19 people right now, 11 people on the cap table and 8 employees, and we're growing. I think it's kind of interesting because this situation in particular is kind of like a testament. Like, I've been a part of a lot of businesses in my short career from, like I said, SaaS to B2B and, raising capital and doing a bunch of things. This scenario is really strange and really different, I think is a testament to how beautiful Web3 is. You have an interesting scenario where, a community kind of took over something. Now, I ended up kind of, being the face of that takeover. But you have an interesting scenario where, typically in regular business, no matter what vertical you're in, like these type of takeovers don't necessarily exist. And I think this is the beauty of Web3. Like yesterday or 2 days ago, I was talking to the community and we were just brainstorming and, part of the direction of something that I wanted to do pivoted. Like never have you ever been in a situation where you're in a startup, right? And you're building a business and you're able to talk to, what would technically be like your shareholders and collaborate and pivot the direction of the business. Like that's never been done. Like when I start a SaaS, I just do the SaaS and I build my business. If I do a direct to consumer brand, like my vision for the brand is the vision and then I execute and then I get it done. This is such an interesting dynamic because never in my life have I been a part of a business where I can lean on a group of 4,000 people and be like, hey, how can we pivot? How can we collaborate? How can we adjust? And then get their suggestions, which is honestly, the conversation I had a couple days ago were amazing suggestions. And I think it just, it embodies the beauty of Web3 and kind of what we're doing here and what we're trying to accomplish. So I think that's just like a testament to like, how this is changing the startup world and the business world in general. It's like nothing I've ever been a part of. And I'm one of those few people that has dabbled pretty much in most of the businesses that you can dabble in.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you look at NFT projects, it's actually very centralized because there is founders, and they control the process and everything that happens with the project. But when the community does what they did with Pudgy Penguins, it became decentralized because now basically the community has somewhat control over the project.
Yeah, I mean, it's a take, right? Because I'm also here to build a business to be the #1 NFT project. I think Pudgy Penguins is a unique opportunity because of its identity, right? PFP projects are an identity first and foremost. And from my opinion, I think this is one of the most net neutral and gender inclusive and ethnicity inclusive identities in the space. So I think, my goal is to be #1. So there still has to be somebody leading the ship, pulling activations. Like it isn't completely like, every time I make a decision, it goes to a DAO and goes to a vote. Like I'm still running this like I would run any other business, but it's amazing that it's decentralized in the fact that I can lean on a community and I'm a vocal leader. I'm not a dictator of a leader. So or I'm an inclusive leader, not somebody who just thinks it's my way or the highway.
Right.
And
which is how a lot of NFT projects are.
Yeah, no, I'm totally not like that. But it's just beautiful how you can interact and collaborate to build something amazing, to build something beautiful. It doesn't need to necessarily be, one direction or not. But, in the same breath, I think decentralized NFT projects are far away because at the end of the day, with everything, you need somebody pushing it forward. And, every decision can't be questioned by a group of 4,000 people who don't necessarily know how to build a business, So, like, I don't think there will be it's going to be a while before the DAOs get intricate enough to basically lead a completely decentralized project forward at the highest level. So, but we're as decentralized as you can get without infringing or impeding on the success of, what I hope Pudgy Penguins to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, with the NFT projects, I think as the space keeps growing, I think we will see this happen more often because there are so many NFT projects out there and there are so many dead projects. I mean, OpenSea is like the graveyard of dead projects. And I think there will be people, because, there is a brand there. There is holders there and there is potential for revenue. So I think more often we will see people going in and revamping projects. Pudgy Penguins is definitely the first, but I think it's going to become mainstream.
Yeah, I didn't really realize this until after we bought it, but, part of this acquisition is like a moment in NFT history. And it's because like no group of individuals has ever bought a project at like such a high amount, especially, a project that is so responsible. Like for those of you guys who don't know, like Pudgy Penguins was printed in the New York Times. Like nobody can really say that, right? And so this is a unique opportunity because, I think furthermore from our perspective, it's like if we succeed, I think it would be so great for the space. I think private equity and top tier entrepreneurs will realize like, whoa, these guys bought this thing for $2.5 million and turned it around and, you know, built an IP that is worth exponentially more. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and private equity guys are sitting on the sidelines kind of watching what we do, because I think it's going to kind of be, you know, dictate a lot of the future of what this stuff is going to go. Because if and when we succeed at what we're trying to accomplish, I think a lot of people are going to start looking at these in a more serious light. I was just at the licensing expo and I was listening to Marvel and Warner and Disney and all of these guys pitch, you know, what their future is for their IPs and how they're building it. Like, you know, the next Marvel and the next Disney and the next Mickey Mouse and, you know, these next Spider-Man is living on the blockchain right now. The thing is what's lacking, I think, in the space is top tier operators, right? Like a lot of people are just slapping things together, working with a dev agency, creating really good art. But, you know, PFP projects in specific is a business. Like if you're treating it any other way, like to say that you know, got 200 traits and generated 10,000 art, you know, pictures, and to say that like, oh, my value proposition is art, I think that's like, you know, cheating yourself and cheating other people. Like that can't be it. Like art is like when I make a one-of-one Picasso, or like when Ferocious does a print, you know, like that's art. But like saying that you drew up, you know, 200 traits, slapped them into a blending machine and spit out 10,000 PFPs, and to lean and say, oh, my value proposition is that I'm art. Like, no, that's not going to happen. At least that's not going to survive, and that's not going to win. You know, what's going to win is what's already been proven to win, is what Doodles is doing, what Bored Ape is doing, is like building a real brand and building a real company and providing, you know, real access of membership and intrinsic and, you know, actual value to what they're doing. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, NFT space, Web3, I mean, it's all in its infancy, and you're right, it is very disorganized. So, you know, everything that's going on right now will dictate the future and is, you know, making history. So I'm excited by everything that's happening right now. So yeah, and the thing about NFT projects is, like you said, you know, it's okay for collectibles and one-in-one art if, you know, for small artists, if that is what their utility is the art, that's fine. But in order to survive, I think creating a brand, telling a story, getting into merch, that has to be what projects do in order to move forward. So this actually segues into a perfect question. Pudgy Penguins has been around since July. So you're almost at your 1 year mark.
Yeah.
And it seems in the space, with the market it's in, most people are looking for new projects or the free mint meta that's going on right now. But what does Pudgy Penguins have planned to kind of stand out and as a project that's established? Because sometimes it can be hard for established projects to get new users and new buyers.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting question, and from my perspective, is I think building the brand integrity for us is step number one. So who are we as a company? Like, what does this identity mean, right? Like to me, a Pudgy Penguin resembles, you know, good vibes, positivity, like who's leaning into that inclusive, cute and inclusive approach. Right now we've seen success with NFTs with being cool and exclusive, and that's fantastic, and there's a huge market in that. But, you know, if you look at all the other businesses in Web 2 that are cool and exclusive, they have a cap, where I think the highest upside's in cute and inclusive. I think more people, when you're thinking about, you know, bringing, you know, right now the space includes of, you know, Web3 consists of 2 to 3 million people who do fairly well for themselves, who are, you know, fairly smart and educated, but like that's not mass adoption. Like OpenSea's user base is not mass adoption, and that's can't be who I'm catering this company to. I'm looking, you know, per the nature of the deal, a lot of people ask themselves, well, like, what NFT projects are going to be around for 5 years from now. Well, I'll tell you Pudgy Penguins will be, because I didn't spend $2.5 million to, leave 6 months from now, So like, I don't have a short-term outlook, right? I'm like invested into the IP, to the fact that like, what does 5 years look from now? So 5 years from now, instead of 2 to 3 million users on Web3, there'll be 20 to 30 million, right? And so what does that new base look like, and how do we continuously onboard them? So step one for me is brand integrity, right? Like, how can people resonate with Pudgy Penguins like you would resonate with, another IP that is, like an Angry Birds or a Pepe the Pig or a Squishmallow? Like, how does somebody, who has a cult audience of, millions of people that are buying all of their products, how do you build something that has integrity, that can stand, versus just something that is chasing short-term pumps and, is dependent on secondary royalties? Like, I think there's multiple businesses and multiple verticals to be built out from the IP. And one of the coolest things from my perspective as an NFT holder, is like, if I'm walking down the aisles of Walmart on Christmas and I'm a Pudgy Penguins holder and I see a Pudgy Penguin toy in the toy aisle, right? And I can get that for my niece or nephew. Like, there's very few things, at least from my perspective, that's cooler than that you can provide, or like a movie or a game, or whatever that may be. In terms of the future, kind of working chronologically, is first brand integrity, and then two, what's our value proposition, right? So we have a really amazing community, for those of you guys who know, but like, your value proposition has to be more than that, right? And so we have a game that we're working on, an iOS mobile game, which I think a lot of people are looking in the wrong direction. I think a lot of people are trying to build web, and that's not where money is spent, nor where users are, right? If we're looking at the term mass adoption, mobile is the only place you should go, and anybody building a play-to-earn game that's not on mobile is doing it wrong, in my opinion. And then, building a brand that can live and grow outside of Web3 and NFTs, I think, is also important, because if not, how are you going to bring new people in? So toys is a huge initiative. I have a really amazing background in toys. Clothes is also something I've done really well for a very long time. So what are those gaps that you can bridge there? So first and foremost, brand integrity. Second, value proposition, which will be our game. And then, three, how do you build brand awareness through other product lines, which is, to me, toys, clothes, children's books, other books. And then last but not least, where I want to win above all else, is storytelling. To me, if you have a PFP collection, what's a Stormtrooper without Star Wars? What's Harry Potter without Hogwarts and magic? These characters are just, traits on a blockchain if there's no story behind them. And that's going to be probably the last and final step for me. Once we really lean into the Pudgy Penguins brand, is how do we build a story that's going to stand the test of time and that people can enjoy for hundreds, if not thousands of years?
Absolutely. Great answer. I think, with mass adoption, I think education is absolutely paramount in the onboarding process. And, people who are in the space, especially projects, should be ambassadors to Web3 and at least have some sort of, plan to help educate people who aren't in the space already. And as far as, collectibles and art, there's always going to be a place for that, I think, but brand development, IP is going to be massive, and I think the space is definitely going to be moving in the direction of transfer of ownership. That technology alone is what is going to probably blow up the space, in my opinion. When Rolex makes a watch, it's one of a kind. So shouldn't they have mint an NFT and have some sort of log or ownership certificate that comes with that? So when it does get sold on the secondary market, that you actually know, because that NFT that is with it can't be duplicated. And I think that's where the space goes as a whole, is transfer of ownership.
I totally agree. I think there's a multitude of different verticals, and the first panel that was here, I mean, the era of boring NFTs will win. But first and foremost, I think there's something to be said about a digital identity and how that resonates with people. From my experience, just interacting with holders and people who partake in these NFT projects, and to some of us here, it doesn't seem real that we have friends in real life, we do our thing, we have our job, we have our workplace. But what a lot of people need to realize, and I learned this really early on as somebody who curated and sold products to people, you have to realize that there's a whole subset of people that aren't like you, and that a lot of different people are different than one another, and there's different groups of people. And there's a looming gap in society where there's a group of people that don't feel heard or don't feel a part of something. And that's where digital identities come in. Right. And that's where the introverts and the people who are shy and timid and don't know how to socialize and can't integrate with other people, this is where they can find safe places in Discord communities, on Twitter, with their digital avatar. And, beyond that, these things can be so much more than that. Like, in my opinion, the only route that a PFP project can go is to build a company with substantial and, IP that matters. Right. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of years, but regardless of where, the boring NFTs come in and, the transfer of ownership, which is definitely the whole point of this, I think the beginning of a bottom-up creator economy is really the shift that we're here, right? Like, if you look at NFTs from a creator standpoint, they do one thing, better than anything, and that is like remove the top-down economy. So like right now, if I'm an artist, typically, whether I'm drawing or a musician, right, there's usually somebody above me who's making most of the money off of my creations, and then I get screwed and, I get pennies on the dollar, and then I move forward. Well, with NFTs, the creator economy shifts a little bit where it's bottom up, right? So the creator can now reap the rewards of its creations or his or her creations and doesn't need some sort of middleman, profiting on the middle. This is where I think we're going to see the most, growth in terms of like creators pushing their narratives through this space. Is like, to me, that idea of like, oh, if you're a musician, you can now get rich making music, or if you're an artist or an author or a storyteller, you can now succeed doing what you're doing. Like, that's what I want to push forward, right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, that concludes our fireside chat with Luca from Pudgy Penguins. And, where can the people out here find you?
Yeah, so I'm Luca Netz, LucaNetz on Twitter and Instagram, so come check me out.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate that. You can find me on Twitter, Maverick Media 15, and check out the NFT and Chill podcast.